What's up, y'all? Toya here, and I am back with another video for y'all. Before we get into the video, make sure you guys leave a like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Alright, y'all. So as many of you guys know, the economy is a huge mess. Expenses are skyrocketing, and yet our pay might go up just a little bit. So a lot of people have turned to finding other alternative sources of income, and turning to gig work is probably one of the more popular options out there. While there are some people who decide to take on gig work full time, I would say a majority of folks are doing gig work part-time. And I don't think there's a lot of people that really explain how to manage doing gig work part-time. You go ahead and see the videos about, look how much you can make in a day. You can go ahead and do this in this time frame. Well, let's go ahead and talk about some tips and strategies to help part-time gig workers. And that's whether or not you're new to the game, you're thinking about getting into gig work, or you've been doing gig work for a little bit. And these tips that I go over, they actually might help you make a little bit more money and be a little bit more efficient. So let's go ahead and go over this list. Tip number 1, choosing the right apps. Now, one thing that I have always preached on this channel is you can never have too many apps. If there's a new app that comes up either in a video or you see it somewhere on social media or somebody's talking about, whatever it may be, sign up for that app. You can never have too many apps under your belt. The more diverse you are, the more opportunities you have at your fingertips. And as someone being a part-time gig worker, you need all of the opportunity that you can get, because some apps, they might work better during certain times, and depending on your schedule, you may or may not be able to actually work during that time frame. And as some of these apps evolve, you know, sometimes an app might shift in your favor and vice versa. So having as many apps under your belt is always the best way to go. And from there, you can go ahead and choose what apps work for you. So for myself, for instance, I do gig work part-time, or I wouldn't even say part-time, honestly. I kind of do gig work when I can. And for myself, I ended up leaning towards catering apps a lot because you can make a decent amount of money in a short amount of time. Most catering apps on average take about 30 minutes or so, maybe more, maybe less. Since I work remotely, I can go ahead and take my lunch period during the time when I would have a catering order. I'll go out, knock that out, and I can be like $50 richer at the end of that order. You just have to choose the best apps that make sense for your particular situation. Like, I literally have a whole folder with a bunch of apps that I have signed up for. And you guys know there's only a handful of apps that I showcase on the channel, but there's nothing wrong with having that many. You can go ahead and divide your apps into like a tier system. You could have your go-to apps, your favorite apps, and that can always change. Sometimes it can depend on the time of the year. It can depend on your market. There's a lot of different variables. So you can have your top tier list of your favorite apps, and then after that you might have your backup apps, and then you have those apps that you signed up for but you really haven't done anything on them, but you know they're there just in case something comes up. So sign up for more apps, give them a try, and you can go ahead and lay out your tier system and figure out what apps work best for you. Moving on to tip number 2, find profitable markets. Now, this is going to be easier said than done. You're actually going to have to take some time to actually work this through. I know a lot of us might want to stay close to home. I'm not going to lie. I like to stay close to home as much as possible. Sometimes I do not want to drive an hour away just to go ahead and do the pickup. And worst case scenario, I have to go into the complete opposite direction of home. You know, that's just more time wasted. And, you know, if everything worked out perfectly, we would all do gigs that are close to home. So when we're done, we just go 5 minutes from the house and boom, we're home. In a lot of cases, it doesn't work that way. Sometimes you're gonna have to venture out into other areas to go and see how that market is operating. Again, using myself as an example, there's this one particular area that is always popping off. There's a lot of restaurants there, there's a lot of stores, a lot of businesses. There's a lot happening in that particular area in comparison to my preferred area of where I would like to go ahead and do deliveries. So I might sit around a little bit to see if anything pops up around home. And then if not, I know that I have to go to that hot area where I know I'm guaranteed to get some orders. And that's just something I kind of learned over time, because if you have a limited amount of time to do work, you don't want to just be wasting your time driving around trying to figure it out and just hoping that you get a decent order worth taking. You might as well just go ahead and take every order at that point. That way you're at least getting something, but of course, that's not going to be the most ideal. So to be as profitable as possible, you have to find profitable areas. So like I said, in the beginning, it might be a little tough. It's a lot of trial and error, but eventually you're going to go ahead and learn. You're going to be like, okay, this particular area is starting to pop off around this time. It's going to do this. And you know, the rest is going to be history. So try to bounce around a little bit, step out of your comfort zone, and go from there. All right, moving on to tip number 3, have a dedicated time block. This is going to vary depending on your schedule. Now, the average person is going to work a typical 9 to 5 schedule. You have some people who might work second shift. Some people might work overnight. Some people work weekends. Everybody has different shifts. But like I said, most people are going to work that typical 9 to 5. I say this because my husband and I, we did a video a little while ago, and we were doing a competition to go ahead and see who can make the most money. And we did this on I think it was a Sunday that we did this on. We didn't make a lot of money. We made about $60 collectively within about a 3 to 4 hour period. It was not a lot going on. And I think if I have that comment, I'll put it up on screen. I think it was Gig Hustler. He had commented. He said, you know, we got out there with the, I think he said the real part-timers. And he's right. He's literally right, because the weekend time is going to be the prime time when everybody wants to come out and do deliveries. So you're competing with probably hundreds of other drivers in your particular market. So pickings are going to be scarce. You might get lucky and you're able to go ahead and get a couple orders, but it's going to be pretty scarce. Granted, you know, that might be the only time that you have to go out and do deliveries depending on your schedule. But then again, that's where that tip where I mentioned before, where that comes into play, finding a profitable market. So if you see that one area is super saturated, you know, you might have to go ahead and bounce around to a different market. But in the case of finding a dedicated time block, you know, if you can only do weekends, then you can only do weekends. But if you have a little bit of flexibility, try to at least carve out a specific time of when you want to do your deliveries. So if you're getting off of work at 3 o'clock, you know, maybe you can come home, have dinner, or just kind of decompress a little bit. And then after an hour, you hit the streets and you're going and trying to get your money. Maybe you can do from 4 to 7. Something like that. Or even if you do only have the weekend time to go ahead and do deliveries, you can still set a dedicated time frame of when you actually want to be out on the road. Because just like the last point, if you're just sporadic and just kind of all over the place, you don't really have a set time frame, you don't really know like what times are going to be popping off for certain apps. Sure, you have the typical lunch rush, dinner rush if you're doing food delivery apps. Even with grocery delivery, a lot of people might be ordering around dinner time. That's pretty standard, but your market will display specific traits as far as, you know, if this area is going to be busy at this time, or, you know, just different things like that. So you have to learn these things. And like I said, this is all just by trial and error. It might be a little rocky in the beginning because you don't really know what time or what particular area to focus on. But as you start to, you know, pay attention to those patterns, you can go ahead and be like, okay, I know this area at this time on this app, this is where I'm going to make the most money. The main thing is, if you could probably tell with these last 2 points, is just really consistency. Like I said, going out and just freestyling it, sometimes it's not the best move. Even if you do that, like I said, you have to do that in the beginning to go ahead and try to learn how things are operating. But when you start noticing trends and patterns and you see like, okay, this is what I need to do, hone in on that and you'll definitely start to go ahead and see some profits. All right, tip number 4. Chat with other drivers. Now, I'm not gonna lie, as an introvert myself, sometimes I just don't like talking to people in public. I really don't. When I go out and I just want to go ahead and do my delivery, call it a day, I'm not really a small talk person, I'm not gonna lie. Now, if I have to, I will, of course. But in this case, it's going to be a little different. Sometimes you got to go ahead and step out your comfort zone if you want to gather some information. You trying to figure things out is cool. That's one thing. But actually gaining knowledge from other drivers in your market, like you can't beat that at all. So you might run into a driver, and if you spark up a conversation, you might get a lot of information out of them. So if you run into someone who's a vet, maybe they've been doing gig work for like 5 years or something, right? They might have a lot of valuable information that you might not have otherwise gotten unless you were on the road for 5 years. So they might be able to go ahead and give you some tips. They might say, hey, you know, this area is always popping off around this time. Or they might tell you, oh, you know, you got to try this app over here. Because remember, all of this kind of comes together, right? So remember, if you got like 20 different apps that you're signed up for, you obviously can't try them all on the same day. It's going to take a lot of trial and error. So if you run into somebody that's been running a certain app, you know, they might be able to go ahead and tell you some information before you even get a chance to try it. They might actually put you on to more apps. There are a lot of local apps that people may not necessarily know about unless they're living in that market locally. 9 times out of 10, you might not find out about that app on a YouTube video or a forum or anything like that because it's local to your particular area. So networking and communicating with other drivers is a good way to not only get additional tips, but to learn about other apps that might be available that a lot of people, they don't know about. So don't be scared to talk to folks. And tip number 5, the last tip number 5, practice good customer service. Now, this is pretty self-explanatory, to be quite honest. You know, you should always practice good customer service. But the reason I say this is because you never know who is watching. You'll never know who's watching. The restaurant, maybe it's a restaurant that you frequent for orders, and maybe one day they decide to pull you to the side and they're like, hey, you know, we're trying to find a dedicated delivery driver for our orders. Would this be something that you're interested in? Because, you know, we like the way that you handle your business. You pretty much have a dedicated route. There's no middleman, so you're going to be getting paid more than what you are on that app. So it could be a merchant, it could be a customer, it could just be a random person that's just walking past and they just see you doing your work. Always practice good customer service because you do not know who's watching. Just like how providing bad customer service can lead to a report and getting a ding on your account and potentially getting deactivated, providing good customer service can provide you better opportunity depending on who's watching. If anything, I would say try to treat it as not only you just doing this gig work so you can get paid, treat it like you're doing an audition so you can get a better opportunity. And everybody that you're interacting with, that's your audience. And one of those folks could be the difference between you getting a direct partnership or a direct contact with that merchant or another customer, or you continuing to work through these apps and, you know, just getting a cut of how much these people are actually paying these apps for this service. So cutting out that middleman, you'll be surprised on how much these apps actually get paid. So yeah, if you cut out that middleman, you'll definitely be on your way. Now, these tips, they technically don't just apply to part-time gig workers. If you're a full-time gig worker, this can definitely apply to you. But I wanted to just go ahead and put more emphasis on part-time gig workers because your time is so limited. You have to make sure you're doing everything right. Not trying to say it has to be perfect, but sometimes it kind of has to if you want to be profitable. You're not going to have a full day to go ahead and figure it out. If you only got a couple hours in the day to figure it out, you have to figure it out because you're going to be pretty much just wasting your time trying to bounce around, trying to figure out things and just do it on the fly. You have to hone in and do what you can so you can maximize your profits during that short amount of time. And expenses, they add up quickly. They add up so quickly. So having a limited amount of time to get it right, you have to get it right. You got to get it right. So I would hope that you guys are able to take these tips and apply it to your gig journey, whether you're doing this temporarily or you're trying to transition into something better, whatever it may be. I just hope that these tips, they do help somebody and help them become more profitable in this game. So yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. So if you guys have any other tips that you think could be helpful for part-time gig workers, let me know in the comments. Now, before I go, I have to remind you guys to leave a like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you do not miss a video. But I'm gonna go ahead and get up out of here, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'm gonna catch you guys on the next one. And as always, stay safe out there and keep grinding.